You know, he's got more balls than most politicians and most men.
It should be British first, foreigners second.
In an ideal world, we'd be all fitted together, we could have a big ruckus, you know what I mean? We show the far right what we're about.
Keir Starmer, fuck off, you're the Nazi.
Who's the common enemy?
Islam.
There's nothing that that will make them go away if we just ignore them.
Stand with England, Palestine was never a place.
Men are going to have to stand up and do the right thing.
I think that the first thing to say is that this is a real threat.
We're here in central London, where Tony Robinson has called a march to take back Britain, whatever that might mean. And the stakes this one are a little bit higher than your average far-right march, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're expecting this march today to be a bit more aggro than your average far-right march. And that's saying quite a bit. But also, there's a growing sense that the radical right might have solutions to offer that the Conservative Party, now in its demise, might have list. While also at the same time, that Tory party having laid the groundwork for fascism to resurge. Really, far-right marches are a sort of big day out, and the politics comes quite a bit secondary to that. Tony Robinson has claimed this march is about taking back Britain, and indeed taking over London. That's kind of why we're expecting it to be a bit more aggro than usual. But that's incredibly vague, and that's a key point. As the far right grows, as it tries to reach a wider and wider and wider community, its ideas also become more vague and more symbolic, and less attached to things that actually matter in people's lives. In a Twitter video posted a couple of days back, he did say that he didn't want people to become violent on this march. Then this morning, he posted this meme. So, bit of mixed messaging. So right now, we're going to go to the far right's meeting point, and we're going to get in there early, because these things tend to get more extreme later in the day, after people have had a few beers and indeed possibly a few lines. We're expecting, of course, boilerplate Islamophobia and a slightly confused and nebulous nationalism, but we're also expecting a slightly larger crowd than we've typically seen on the British far right of quite hardcore politicised fascists who are perfectly willing to go well beyond what the law says they can do to get their political point across. And the question for the country, and indeed for us, is, does Tony Robinson still matter? Indeed, might he matter a lot more now than he did before? How are you doing?
I'm fantastic.
What's the vibe? What are people here to do? What are you here to do?
Well, okay, so I'm 59 years old. In my whole life, I've never signed a petition, I've never been to a rally, I've never done anything.
Your first one?
My first one ever, 59 years old. And over the last few years, I live outside of the UK a lot of the time. And over the last few years, every time I come back to visit, to see family, catch up, I see the country changing. I've been out in the UK more than 20 years. And I see there's an erosion of a lot of things that make the UK, make the Britain that I grew up in. So there's been an erosion of the values, of the culture, there's a disrespect to our history. These are all the things that make our country great.
Tell us about that greatness. What is great about Great Britain?
Everything. Everything. Everything.
You're going all in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Great Britain is one of the best places to live on the planet.
The scripture says, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people, and that is the nation's problem.
Are you seeing a lot of more Christians coming to this kind of demo?
I've spoken to a few of them, yeah. I've come from Warrington, ostensibly to witness the gospel, really, you know. So there's a lot of people. Wherever there's people, that's the way you go.
What are those problems that have come from the returning away from God?
That's what, well... immorality.
We're being upstaged.
Without saying too much, immorality. Generally, all things, really. The lack of... the breakdown of the family, many other things as well. Right. Well, you must have seen it, you can say it. That lady's seen it.
What have you seen?
I've lost track of your conversation. What were you saying?
Can you tell about what Tommy means to you?
I don't know why I follow. I just believe in what he says. You know, he's really courageous. He's been through a lot of crap. You know, like over there, he got arrested. And the man's got balls. I just love him. I know that sounds really pathetic, but, you know, he's got more balls than most politicians and most men on this planet. And if there are a few more like Tommy, then maybe this country would be a better place. But at the moment, it's just Tommy and us versus the world.
What would you like to see happen in this country to make it better?
Just the politicians to listen. They seem to listen to everyone else apart from us.
We make a promise every November. We observe the 2-minute silence and we promise never to forget. But we've forgotten what it is we're promising to remember. We're supposed to remember never to let it happen again, and we're heading straight towards another Holocaust, I believe, you know. But yeah, so it's about time we stood up and made some noise.
Holocaust?
I think so, yeah. I can see it coming.
Of the Jews?
Jews, Christians, other groups. I don't want to single anybody out as the cause of it. But yeah, I think so.
British people should be first. Politicians, British people first. They should be for British government. British government should be British first.
Who are the British?
People who are born here, bred here.
Yeah, but that means any colour as well, not just white.
Yeah, exactly, born and bred here, any colour. As long as they appreciate our values, not try and take us away.
This is an extraordinary get-up.
Good. I'm Joseph.
You're Joseph. Hi. What's the vibe today? What's going on today? What's the
historic day, a big rally for the government to know that, look, we love this country. Anybody who comes to this country, he has to respect the values, the people, and then abide the laws.
What are the values? What are those values that you want people to respect?
Yeah, I'm talking about the religious values. This country is a Christian country. It's not a Muslim country. They want to take over. It's not fair to give free houses for people who haven't even contributed a penny into the system. While we, the indigenous people working that pay taxes, we don't get that incentives. It should be British first, foreigners second.
I'm interested in this T-shirt.
Yes.
Tell us about this.
Anti-Flag is a political band, and basically we're against, and it's the same for myself, anti-racism, anti-fascist, and the people who were against the fascists and the racists are the EU, the global establishment. It follows basically the World Economic Forum, and Klaus Schwab is just the modern day Adolf Hitler, along with Bill Gates, who's basically Mengele eugenics. And this is what we're fighting against. We want peace. We don't want all wars all the time just because they need to make money. We want them to stop making diseases, putting them out, and then turn them around and then injecting us with bioweapons, which is causing fatalities, deaths and injuries, and no one wants to talk about it because our government are corrupt. These Western governments are corrupt. They want us to go into war. NATO are a terrorist organisation who wants us to go to war and tell us what Russia and all these people are wanting. They're the ones that are bombing innocent people in the Donbass region and then turning around with American bombs and British bombs and telling us that it's the Russians and everybody else. And when we stand up against them, we're the Nazis. No, Keir Starmer, fuck off, you're the Nazi.
Rousing. I haven't got a follow-up. Yes. Okay, cool. Thanks. That was. I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are "told you so."
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, my daughter bought it me for I think it was for Christmas, maybe. Yeah. Well, it's just like what's going on really now, isn't it? Like.
When did you first start identifying as a conspiracy theorist?
When with COVID, really. Yeah. Just sort of opened my eyes to everything, really. And, you know, I've had vaccinations and things before. I've been to Kenya and things. But it was just kind of something that made me think, hang on, something's not right here. Why are you being coerced into taking something? So I didn't. And I didn't wear masks or anything like that. I had to leave my job in the end. And, yeah, so there you go.
Maybe you trust Tommy Robinson. Is that someone?
Yeah, I do. Do you know what I love about him? He's a fighter. He wants what's best for our country. He's down to earth. He's a working class person. And that's what I want. That's what I want for my kids and their kids and stuff. I just trust my gut. That's what I go with, my gut.
We found Tommy Robinson. Here he is. Tommy Robinson?
Like to be.
Sorry?
I'd like to be.
You'd like to be Tommy Robinson?
Yeah.
What is it about him that you'd like to emulate?
I've followed him for years. He's a normal guy, working class guy, and should be further than he is.
What's prevented him from being further than he is?
The government, the left, hope not hate, all a bunch of traitors.
Traitors?
They are, yeah. They're not British. They should be for England, they should be for Britain, not for the others.
What would you like to see happen to make them more for the government in particular? I don't think Hope Not Hate are particularly interested in being for Britain, but the government might be. What would you like to see in government to make it more for England?
Get rid of the ones that support the left side.
Get rid of them?
Yeah, the ones that want to do things for England, not for other countries. All their money, the tax money, wasted. People don't realise. All these younger ones have got a lot to learn. They've got a lot to learn. What's going to happen to them?
What are you particularly worried about happening, say, in like 10 years' time? What do you think we're going to be seeing? Takeover?
Yeah, takeover.
By?
Show law and all the Muslims. Yeah, ones that are all coming in. No passports. Set up their own army.
Setting up their own army?
They will do, won't they? They do enough as it is, don't they? You've only got to follow it on YouTube and see what they do.
Well, who are you seeing on YouTube that's making you get a sense of that Muslims take something with their own army?
British people. People that support Britain. Not the others.
The others are coming up quite a lot here. Do I know what you mean? I don't know. I think I know what you mean, roughly.
You're not allowed to say much, but...
Yeah. You're not allowed to say these days?
No, you're not allowed to say too much, because they'll be on your door.
Amazing T-shirt. Do you want to talk about it?
Don't want to talk about it.
Well, I'm kind of curious about, we're here to celebrate Britain, British values. Lots of people are talking about America. Obviously, America's a very similar kind of country. No,
America's more important.
Well, I mean, globally, absolutely right, yeah. So what is it that's important to you about Trump and fighting, particularly?
I believe in everything he tells us. I believe in everything he believes in. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of thought, all our freedoms are being taken away, being stripped away to appease people that are not even from here. We're scared to say what we think because of other people. That's the Philippines, by the way. I'm talking to my wife, actually.
Hi.
That's her ear.
Hello.
America's going through this shit as what we are, and we should stand together. But the whole of Europe should be standing together. But that man is going to unite the West, and that's what we need.
He's going to unite the West. He's made some sort of quite disparaging remarks about things like NATO. Is that...
NATO, I think I'll back him up there. There's people in NATO that are not spending the money they should do. You look at the size of the economy of Germany and what they spend. We've all got to start pulling our weight. That's what it is at the end of the day. Why should America do it?
I'm surprised to hear a pro-German rearmament position. Last time that happened wasn't so great. But
well, we're all cousins now. We've all got to stand together. We've all got a common enemy.
Who's the common enemy?
Islam.
Islam?
Yes.
All of Europe and the West against Islam. The globalists. Globalists and Islam, they're connected? They're the same thing?
Well, I think what it is that the globalists are using Islam as a tool, thinking that they will be able to control it. I think we're in a lot of trouble, and this is the only way to sort it out.
I'm curious about this sign, not far right, just right.
Just right.
Presumably you don't just mean things like centre right.
No.
What do you mean by just right?
We're just right. We're sick to death of £58 million spent weekly on immigrants. We've got to look after our own. We've got our own homeless. Our hospitals are crumbling, our schools are crumbling. We want we want our voices heard, basically.
Are you getting your voices heard?
We feel we've been ignored by the Tories, Labour. Vote reform. Perhaps our voices will be heard.
You voted reform, I'm guessing. There was an election just now. Yeah. You got 4 million votes. You got 4 seats.
Yes,
not very impressive. No, why was that?
It was impressive because it was short notice. Rishi was frightened of the reform vote. That's why he done it so quickly.
Tell us about the flag.
Stand with England. Palestine was never a place. Here to make a difference.
I'm genuinely really curious. What's the connection between Britain and Israel that you're seeing?
With them because terrorists that attacked Israel.
This is in October the 7th, last year.
Hamas is a terrorist.
Correct.
How are you doing? What's the vibe today? What's the plan?
The plan is simple. for whoever's in attendance, fly the flag of St. George, or the Great British Flag, unite under that flag, that which represents your culture, which is the fabric that holds society together, that which is based on Christianity, not on fish and chips, not on queuing, not and before law and order and democracy, Christianity.
Interesting. Is that the UKIP stance now?
That is the only stance that should be had in the UK. It should be like that during peacetime, and it certainly should be like that during wartime. And make no mistake, we are at war internally.
Internally at war. Tell us what about that. What's that war like?
The war consists of an enemy, which is the communists, the far left extremists, and the Islamists. And you notice the unholy alliance and the marriage of convenience in the far left between Islamists and communists. That goes back many decades. We're seeing it now, history repeating itself on our streets, in our schools, in the sectarian miniature caliphates. We don't need any more evidence to know that it's time for a military deployment in the UK to allow for a platform to restart things, because you have to stop the rot first before you can move on to greener pastures. That's how far we've fallen.
You're talking about military, you're talking about like martial law? Or is that what you mean?
I'm not entirely sure I think that's a US expression. I'm not entirely sure what that should look like. But the reality is there's 39,000 Islamists on MI5's watch list. There's 90,000 unchecked, undocumented, illegal aliens in the country. So the police are paralysed by fear. So we can't rely on them, can't rely on the government. So we need a political party in power who has the gumption to do what's necessary. As awful as that may be, or as hard as that may be, we'd all pay more tax to see that happen, and that's what's going to happen to stop the rot and to restart at some point. The time for radical regime change in Britain is now, and that must happen.
You seem to be saying something more radical than just leave the EU. I mean, much more radical than maybe just leave the EU.
Yeah, so what you'll get with reform and what you'll get with Conservatives, it's all big business. It's all money, money, money. They'll tread into the culture war, then they'll back off. They'll mention Islamism, then they'll back off. They'll mention communism, then they'll back off. No, we need to declare war on the far left in Britain. The Marxists teaching our kids. The radicals, the Communist Party, is actually a party in the UK, for example. The mantras that come out, the left-wing bias, for example, the Islamist sectarian violence, rioting and threats of violence, bullying, intimidation. It's all far-left totalitarian propaganda, and fear paralyses people. That's what it does. So we're calling for soldiers to come forward and back a party that's got the belly for the fight.
Soldiers? You mean like actual soldiers in the military, or you mean like soldiers in like political soldier kind of sense?
I mean soldiers of Christ. I mean political soldiers. I mean military soldiers. Obviously, I'm not in charge of recruitment for the army just yet. So we're talking about the mentality required. Men are going to have to stand up and do the right thing.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, Britannia! Britannia rules the waves! Brave troops!
Behind us there is Tommy Robinson. So he is the man who basically everyone is here to see. It is Tommy Robinson, surrounded by acolytes, fans, journalists, and of course the police. Just heard one of these police officers say as Tommy Robinson was arriving, it's a dangerous cult of personality like Stalin or Mao. Not sure that's impartial.
I have no opinions on anything, sir.
No opinions on anything at all? Not that it's a dangerous cult of personality like Stalin or Mao?
Whilst I'm at work, sir, no.
So what do we see in this crowd? Well, broadly speaking, confusion, a sort of shallow nationalism that when you push on it just gets repeated, the same talking points over and over and again. This time mixed in with a little kind of bit of pro-Israel talk, some conspiracy stuff, and slightly more Christian talk than I was expecting from the far right in the UK, which has not been typically like massively religious, but apparently is now. We just saw at the very end of those Vox Pops a group Youth Alliance show up. They're part of a collection of much more extreme groups that are much more on the ethno-nationalist, explicitly biologically racist end of the far right than the civic nationalists that Tommy Robinson has tried to cultivate over the last 15 years. Then Tommy Robinson arrived to enormous acclaim. and the march has begun, starting over here at this end of Aldwych, moving over here, and then going down the Strands to Trafalgar Square, where there will be a rally. So we put in our shifts at the far right demo. We're now going to be heading over to its counter-protest, which is happening a few blocks north of it. Well, we're just asking what's the vibe, what's the mood, how have you found today?
Well, as probably you might be able to tell, it's a very peaceful mood, as always. Contrary to what a lot of people might want to portray, this is the side of the peaceful movement in terms of looking for racial injustice. And then on the other side, you got the less so probably peaceful movement. I haven't seen what's gone on over there, but I assume it is. So yeah, this is peace, that's unpeace. It's a contrast, there's duality there.
There was definitely a few breakaway people who were trying to get it past the police lines and to find it.
Yeah, I was right there, yeah. So they are like, you know, see, honestly, in an ideal world, we'd be all pitted together, we can have a big ruckus, you know what I mean? We show the far right what we're about. Ideally, we're all be like, not pitched up together. We stand by what we believe in, and if they want to resort to violence, we stand in defence of that.
What kind of ruckus?
Don't know, it depends, innit? What kind of pussies you got on that side, you know, like Tommy Robinson, that fucking pussy.
So we're just here to oppose fascism and racism. That's what we do. We've been doing for years and years, and especially now that Tommy Robinson is here.
You have been doing it for years and years, and I guess there's a sense the crowd here is relatively small, compared certainly to the far-right demo across the road. Are you worried there's a sort of a stagnation that's happened in British anti-fascism? There's a sort of a feeling that people will be doing the same thing over and over again, and it's not quite gripping people in the same kind of way as it might have done in the past?
I wouldn't say it's very small. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but it looked quite big to me, so I wouldn't go defeated as yet.
Not defeated as yet? All right, well, I've been to both demos, and I can tell you this is much smaller.
Really? Smaller than the Trafalgar Square one? Oh dear. That's not good, but we'll keep on coming. I mean, yeah, we're not defeated.
What do you need to do to keep driving those numbers higher?
Well, spread the word, keep protesting, and I think, and try to invite more people to come. Hopefully the unions will become more involved as well, because fascism is an anti-union, anti-worker movement, as we know. So I hope that the unions will take it more seriously soon, and more workers, more activists will become involved.
This is not the mobilised, energised crowd that we saw at the Tommy Robinson demo. I think there is really substantially a cultural problem with anti-fascism, that it's become the sort of routinized sermon-like duty of a very small number of people, and it's failed to expand or find new constituencies where people would want to, come out to these demos. I do worry that the long term of this stuff is not substantially better than this. What's the mood here today?
I think the mood's good, and I think, it's really important. I was here the last time Tommy Robinson came. There was about 300 of us, 5,000 of them. I don't know their numbers today, but I imagine, it would be several thousand of them. But our numbers have grown, this side. We've got at least 1,000, maybe, 2,000, 3,000. I don't know what we're organisers are claiming, but the point is we're starting to build, but we're in a long struggle, really. When, it's going to take, we need to build up our numbers, start matching them, start outnumbering them, start driving a wedge between the hard racist Nazis around Tommy Robinson and the softer racists that he's trying to pull, around him as well. And that's going to come with, building our side, building protests like this.
That's often the old sort of civic versus ethnic nationalist kind of distinction. Civic nationalists much less focused on biological racism, much more focused on sort of cultural racism, and the ethno-nationalists much more focused on biological racism. And you're seeing a sort of like a possibility of driving a wedge between these two different groups.
Yes, but also, yes, I think that's right, but also you've got to understand the particular danger of fascism as well, and the fascist core as well that Tommy Robinson's trying to build, of a core of those ethno-nationalists, if you like, as well. There's a dangerous dynamic now with reform in Parliament, 5 MPs and stuff doing the respectable racism, or in some cases not particularly respectable racism between Lee Anderson and Farage himself, and the attempt to build a street fighting movement, which is what Tommy Robinson represents on the streets. And what we've got to do is stop that dangerous dynamic where the two can grow in tandem.
This is, of course, the classic anti-fascist symbol of fascism being thrown in the bin. I'm kind of wondering what you would say to the fascists if you could talk to them, or the far right on the other side of the street.
What the fuck you doing?
Curious, what's the laxative lemons about?
It's it kind of eases up the bowels, so all the rubbish comes out.
Oh, it's a kind.
And here's your man who's it's sponsoring it.
This is a attempt to. So, Tommy sells people laxatives and they become shite. What's the? Give me a sort of picture here.
Well, it's about fascism, obviously, isn't it? And the sort of illogicality of fascism.
I think that everyone that came on the march felt like not just that we were doing something important, and we were like terrified because there were 10,000 or whatever, how many Tommy Robinson wants to say, far-right racist thugs up the road, but actually because we felt like, even though we didn't outnumber them today, we feel like we have the momentum to do that going forward. And I think obviously our demo was angry and, you know, anti-racist and militant and so on, but also, yeah, it felt positive, I think, in light of everything.
We've been hearing people that there was a sort of how do you see this movement in relation to the Palestine movement, which feels like it has a lot more energy and like massive numbers at the moment. How do you see this as relating to that?
Well, I think obviously that it does relate because, you know, the likes of Braverman and Sunak when they were in power, you know, the Islamophobic attacks they put on, you know, people out, those massive demos that we saw for Palestine, that creates the kind of conditions where Tommy Robinson thinks he can come out and mobilise people again. So, you know, we want to bring kind of the energy of all those people that were out protesting for Palestine, you know, into, you know, a broad anti-fascist and anti-racist movement. I think the thing is with this is like, you know, when we smashed Tommy Robinson in 2018, if you looked at our demos at the start, it is a process. I think there are people that don't see Tommy Robinson as a threat, obviously because he is, you know, a fraudster, a loser, he says he's an outsider and so on. I think there's an argument to be had with the movement as a whole to say that, no, we actually have to take it seriously and, you know, there's nothing that that will make them go away if we just ignore them. Like, I don't think that people think, oh, you don't give them oxygen or whatever. No, actually what gives them oxygen is the likes of the racism that we see coming from the likes of, you know, Nigel Farage, Reform UK in power and so on. That's what gives them the oxygen, not the anti-fascists mobilising against them on the streets.
And I wonder if there's a kind of a way that this movement could feel more insurgent. Because at the moment, to be totally frank, some of it felt sort of like sermon-like, or sort of like we're sort of doing the same thing that people have been saying for a very long time on the left. Is there a sort of edginess that's lacking?
I don't know about that. I hope that, you know, we obviously stand in a very proud tradition, but yeah, you know, I don't want, you know, everyone to just be talking about the good old days. Obviously things are different today. You know, we've got the threat of reform, we've got the threat of a hard right bloc to the right of the Tories for the first time. So it is different, but we know that people like Tommy Robinson stand in the fascist tradition as well. But I think that, you know, the way we do that is by bringing more people onto the streets and, you know, young people. It does make a difference. You know, we don't just say like we want to unite young and old. But anti-fascism for us isn't something that is exclusionary. It's not just people masking up and having a fight with the fascists, although obviously, you know, I commend that. We want to create something that says that anti-fascism is for everyone. That's why we want, you know, families, Muslims, whatever, on our demonstrations, you know, uniting against it. But I get what you mean because, you know, we need to make anti-fascism cool again.
How do you make anti-fascism cool again?
I think that the first thing to say is that this is a real threat and that Reform UK got 4 million votes, which they could translate into 8 million votes. And I think many people, young and old, gay and straight, recognise this and they will want to become part of the campaign. But in so doing, we can't repeat. I was involved with the Anti-Nazi League in the 1970s. We blazed a trail with the carnivals and so on, and the new people coming into the movement need to fashion the movement according to their priorities and their likes and dislikes. But this is urgent, and I think it's the urgency will make it cool. We had 3 weeks to build this march, and what was impressive, Stand Up to Racism branches up and down the country worked like devils to get this. I think there were probably 5,000 or 6,000 people on this march. There were 47 trade union banners. And what this shows is when the pictures come out tonight of 15,000 fascists in Trafalgar Square, people will say, oh my God. But then they will see this substantial demonstration today, and we're putting down a marker. This is the beginning of a process to wipe the Nazis off the street.
I'm really wondering about this. So the Tommy Robinson stuff seems very clear to me. It's very clear how you oppose that. But Reform UK is a much more nebulous thing. But it's clearly sort of aligned, or it's sort of melding with the Tommy stuff. Now the Conservatives are sort of diminished as a power, at least in Parliament, and definitely as a cultural power, there's a sort of possible alliance between these more sort of intense, like street movements based, and that more sort of electoral thing that you're getting from Reform. How do you counter that stuff with Reform? Because this is very clear, right? Like they go on a demo, you go on a counter demo. But like Reform is a much more slippery beast in some ways. What's the strategy there?
I think that's a really important question. You see, Reform has 2 wings to it, in my view. It has the wing that Lee Anderson articulated 2 days ago when he said that the police who had stamped on the head of an Asian man in Manchester Airport, they should be given medals. Those people are fellow travellers of Tommy Robinson, and I would describe them as hardline racists who will merge with the fascists. There are other people in Reform, however, who take Farage's message that Britain is broken, dentistry, national health, housing, climate change and so on, and they are in despair at what Starmer, what the Tories have failed to deliver. And this will be a process which will develop in the next few months and next couple of years. And so those are people we need to split off from Tommy Robinson. So whenever they go on a demo, the hard nuts will remain on the demo, but the softer people will say, I want to have nothing of that. I'm angry, I'm upset at my living standards and so on and so forth, but I'm not going to align myself with the Nazis. So we have to make a division between what I would describe as soft racists and hard racists and Nazis. That's what we did with the Anti-Nazi League in the late 70s. That's what we did with Nick Griffin in 2010 with the British National Party. And to do that, we need to build a mass movement of people of many political persuasions and often of none, but they're united in seeing this threat. This demonstration was a very good first step in a process that we're going to have to continue over the next months and couple of years.
So we're heading back now through the sort of pacified zone of Westminster. What have we learned today? Well, the far right is definitely on the move. There's a march of perhaps 15,000, a very substantial turnout for the British far right of really quite historical proportions. Although the march was billed as really being about two-tier policing and a whole collection of concerns like that, what people told us was overwhelmingly about Islamophobia and their dislike of Muslims and their sense of threat they get from Muslims who were taking over Britain in some sort of nebulous way. They couldn't ever quite explain how. And on the counter demo, well, although it was substantial, significantly larger than it has been before, there's also a sense of a lack of joie de vivre, a lack of urgency, and a lack of cultural sort of incisiveness to this movement presently. We got told from someone who didn't want to be on camera that they had tried to get the organisers to engage more strongly with the Palestine movement, where of course the energy is right now, and have really struggled to do that. And that will be a problem for this counter-protest movement, this anti-fascist movement going forward. So there are 2 linked problems here. The far right is obviously increasing at both the street and the electoral level, with Tommy Robinson's gang and of course Reform UK. One of the solutions proposed by various people back at this march was to try and drive a wedge between these two groups of people. But that's a very nuanced and difficult thing to do. And there's an open question about whether or not it can really be the politics of a mass, vibrant, left-wing street movement. Do I think this is a good tactic? Well, it is true that racism remains, on the face of it, pretty unpopular in the UK. But there is a problem with the confusion and the levels of confusion that we've seen in the far-right march, that for a lot of people, they might not even be able to tell the difference.